need them. It can be a long walk. I've been getting plenty of rest out here, so I guess I'll stick around here for a while. Let me introduce myself. I'm Charles Wall. I was the first fully paid employee of the Elgin Fire Department. I say employee because I was never really a firefighter. My job was to pull the James T. Gifford, the steamer, to and from the fire and to maintain the horses. But I'm a little ahead of myself. Let me share with you just how I got that job. I was born in Germany in 1837, moved to Chicago. I married there and began a family, but we were relocated by the Great Fire of 1871. So I brought my wife and 2 children over here to Elgin and became a teamster. Teacher's life is kind of a hard one, and with a growing family, I ultimately had 7 children. Had to come up with a way to make ends meet. Well, the city had this James T. Gifford steamer, bought that in 1869. Now, for the first year, the firemen pulled that thing by hand. Now, it weighed 7,000 pounds, exclusive of coal and water, so they grew tired of this after a while with the old dirt streets. And they said after the first year, the city would politely, well, you give us some horses to pull this thing or we quit. And the city said, well, all right, go ahead and quit. So they did. And I think there was more to it than that, but anyway, that was kind of the crux of the matter at that point. Well, of course, they had to have a fire department, so they wound up with some more firemen after a while. But horses are expensive to maintain and expensive to buy. So what they came up with was the idea of paying teamsters in town $5 to the first man who could get his team over there and pull it to the fire. Well, my stable was pretty close by, so I availed myself of those $5 on numerous occasions, which I suppose is why the city hired me in 1883 after they bought a pair of horses. Now, if you can imagine one team of horses for the entire city, they're not going to leave them in the fire station all the time because fires were not that common and it wasn't an everyday occurrence. So the team was made to do other work as well, which I suppose led to the story that was printed in the local paper at the time. A man named Sam Johnson found himself in possession of a very fine cigar one afternoon. And Sam was a frugal sort who didn't want to waste all of that luxury in one setting. So he thought, I'll smoke half of the cigar and save the rest for later. Well, that was quite smart of him, but it wasn't quite smart enough because he didn't put it out all the way before he put it in his pocket. They say the alarm was turned in as Sam's waistcoat was set ablaze, but bystanders put him out before the steamer could get there because the horses were out on other business. Now, that was in the paper, and I'm not sure if that was maybe Lamont's great-grandfather that had something to do with that, but I kind of hunch it might have been poking a little fun at the city at that point. At any rate, Sam survived, and we got the team to do their job more often than not. Part of my job, when I was hired, at the grand sum of $540 per year, was to maintain the horses and sweep above the stable. It was the best room in the house, but it was handy for the work. So training the horses was also part of the deal. And training horses is kind of a quirky thing. You have to find out how to make them do what you want them to do and maybe like it while they're doing it. Horses can be pretty stubborn. What we devised was a system of starting with the horses in their stalls behind the steamer. We sound the gong, stable stall doors would open. Horses would be motivated by the flip of the switch, and they would be guided by ropes to the front of the steamer, backed in, the harness would be lowered, clipped on, and get out of the station. Sounds like a lot of moving parts, and it was. However, with well-trained horses, now these horses weren't just some hacks, mind you. These were thoroughbred Kentucky racehorses in many cases. Old Jake was the one that started his career in Kentucky. Fine horses. And when they were well-trained and everything went well, you could get out of the station almost as fast as that brand newfangled engine down there does. So we were very proud of that accomplishment. Horses are, like I said, kind of smart when they want to be. And every day about 3 o'clock there was a test of the alarm system to make sure everything was working properly. And the horses caught wise to that after a while. Now normally when the alarm went off, it stepped pretty lively to get to that place. 3 o'clock would come along, they'd dull the sound and say, well, okay, we know what's going on here. And they just kind of saunter over to their positions and take their place. So they got to be accustomed to the routine just about as much as the firemen did. Well, my life wasn't to last too much longer than that. My health broke sometime later, and I died in 1894 at the age of 57 at my home at 379 Lovell Street. My great-granddaughter remembers my wife Mary, for she lived a bit longer to 1928. And granddaughter Denise Anderson's around here someplace. If you see her, tell her I said hi. She stopped by a while ago, and it was good to visit with her. And it was nice to visit with you folks today, too, and I hope you enjoy your stay here, as I've enjoyed my stay all these many years. Come back and see me again sometime.
My name is James Morrison Darnell, the Reverend James Morrison Darnell. Now, of course, I'm not dressed as a clergyman. The way I used to dress in a black suit, of course, I am no longer privileged to wear. So I decided I would appear before you as the derelict I became, as a moral lesson to you all. Year after year, the Historical Society brings back people to talk to you who are credits to their community and their families. This year, for the first time, they decided to bring back someone who is despicable. Me. I had a brilliant future ahead of me as a minister. I won't mention what denomination, but I am a graduate of theology school at the University of Chicago. My first parish was here in Illinois at Avon. That's where I met Ethel, one of the church workers, in 1911. We got married, and I soon became a minister in Owatonna, Minnesota. But Ethel had enough of me, and we separated. We never did get divorced. And in Owatonna, I took up with Ruth, the daughter of a Minnesota publisher. Ruth had a child. She claimed it was mine. I said, might have been, might not. That's the kind of fellow I was. And then I got this chance to be a minister of a larger parish in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So I said to Ruth, I'll go to Kenosha, set things up in the parsonage, and you join me. Well, in order to get from Owatonna to Kenosha, in those days, this is 1913, you had to come by train. So I came from Owatonna to Chicago, and of course I stayed a little in Chicago because I had been to school here. Well, one thing led to another, and that's where I met Doris, a 17-year-old high school student. At the pool, I said, let's get married. She was a fool, too. So we got married, despite the fact that I hadn't been divorced from Ethel, and I had Ruth up there in Owatonna. So I figured I would work it out to tell Doris's mother to keep her in school. And after she graduated from high school, then she could join me in Kenosha. So I went to Kenosha, and Ruth joined me there. And everything would have been all right, except Doris's mother became suspicious and came to Kenosha. That's where she discovered me living with Ruth. She grabbed to one of the church trustees, and I beat a hasty retreat. I went to Chicago and said, Doris, will you take me in? She rejected me. I don't know why. In the meantime, the newspapers all over the country were talking about me as the marrying parson. Probably there isn't anyone buried here in Bluff City Cemetery who got more publicity in those days than I did. All this publicity attracted the attention of the district attorney for the Northern Illinois District Court in Chicago. Because in 1910, the United States Congress passed the Mann Act, spelled M-A-N-N, after John Mann, the Illinois congressman, pushed it for conclusion. The Mann Act prohibited transporting women for immoral purposes across state lines. And I was on the horns of the dilemma. If I could prove that it wasn't immoral because Ruth was my wife, I was a bigamist in a state court. So I decided to tough it out and claim that I hadn't brought Ruth from Owatonna to Kenosha, that one of her relatives brought her there. Well, it didn't do any good. I was convicted. Sentenced to 3 years in the federal pen in Levendale. Tough call, got out. Of course, I couldn't be a minister because it just so happened by coincidence that the chairman of the committee who removed me from the church was an Elgin minister. You know what he said about me? He said I was handsome, which I was in my younger days, that I was glib and fluent, had a brilliant mind, but that I was dangerous, morally corrupt, and utterly worthless. He later repeated all that on the front page of the Daily News here in Albany. You wonder how I ended up here. Well, I had got a job up in Rockford, traveling to Midwest cities, setting up bookkeeping systems. And I came to Elgin, and that's where I met Mildred. She was an 18-year-old senior at Elgin High School. Well, one thing led to another, and I said, Mildred, let's get married. Well, she didn't want to take me to see her parents. So we just eloped. Didn't say anything to anybody. Went up to Belvedere. We each gave false names, false ages, and got married. In the meantime, Mildred was missing here in Elgin. Her pictures on the front page of the Daily News. Missing for 10 days, parents frantic. Never bothered to let them know. After 6 weeks, we surfaced. Why? Because Ruth in Minnesota had put a detective on my trail because of child abandonment. They never bothered to support the son that she claimed we had in Minnesota. Well, the parents here in Elgin finally accepted the situation, but it was a troubled marriage. After 2 children, I deserted her. She got a divorce, 4th one, I think. And I became a derelict. Squandered the inheritance of my grandmother. Ended up in Cook County Hospital as a pauper. Died there. Mildred heard about it, and rather than see me buried in a potter's field, she brought the body to Elgin and paid for a marker, Reverend James Darnell. I have 2 lessons here. Ladies, don't let your daughters and granddaughters be a fool about somebody who's handsome and good. Don't let them be groupies for some rocker. And gentlemen, all I can say is, if you look at me, remember, one wife at a time.
I was not expecting company today.
That's right, kiddo.
Oh, here I am. I was just preparing to leave for the watch factory. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. And I do need to leave soon. I cannot talk long. I might. Well, since you are here, I suppose I might as well introduce myself to you and give you a little bit of my life story. My name is Lydia Richards Hawkins. I was born on December 10th in 1844 near Columbus, Ohio. My family and I moved to Elgin after the Civil War, and I began working in the watch factory. It was my fortune to meet my beloved George Hawkins. We were married in 1891. I was 47 at the time. We had no children. George and I moved to his family farm in Minnesota for a short period of time, and then we returned to Elgin. George passed on to another life in 1925, and I remained on this earth for a short time longer. I moved into the old people's home on South State Street, which I understand is still in existence today, but is now referred to as the Oak Crest Residence. Well, I remained in the old people's home from 1926 until my death in 1933. Well, perhaps you'd like to learn a little bit about the watch factory. The first watch was sent to the jeweler for casing in the spring of 1867, although it was actually made in 1866. There was much testing done on it before it was actually sold. Now, none of the watch cases were made in the factory. Only the watch works were made at the factory. The first watches were key wind watches. Opened back and wound it with the key. Later, in 1873, the stem winder was introduced and became quite popular. Now, national watches were very popular from the very beginning. However, its name was not. The name of the company was the National Watch Company, and that was the name that appeared on the watches. But people kept asking for those watches made in Elgin. So, in 1874, the name of the company was officially changed to the Elgin National Watch Company, and the name Elgin from that time on appeared on the face of the dial. Now, I worked in the train department. The train department was responsible for producing those little wheels and pinions which transmitted power from the mainspring to the balance, or was it the balance to the main? I don't know. I don't care. I just know I produced those little wheels, those little pinions, and they were a very important part of the watch. Now, I did enjoy my time at the watch factory, but my pride and joy, other than my husband George, was the publication, The Lady Elgin, a working woman's journal. The first edition came out in May of 1872. This is an 1873 edition. Isn't that a lovely masthead? I was one of 3 original publishers and editors, the others being Alida Ailey and Bertha Ellsworth. Now, Bertha withdrew her partnership in the publication in 1874, and the watch factory purchased her 3rd share of the journal. Now, they helped us by securing ads, and they also purchased 500 subscriptions, which they gave to others in the field, in the watch field. The publication was a spicy and interesting paper for women, filled with something for everyone. It contained original stories, it contained poetry, there were replies to questions concerning the treatment of watches, there was a column entitled Letters from the Repair Department. My favorite articles were What I Know About Ventilation, Repotting Plants, and Steve's Little Wife. Now, to give you a flavor of the paper, I would like to read to you one of the poems which was published in the September 1872 edition. It just happens to be written by me. It is called Reunited. A fond mother rose at the dawn of the day, and her heart was o'erflowing with joy. For ere that sunset a vessel would come and bring back her long wandering boy. Poverty forced him to roam o'er the seas and leave her alone on the shore. But today he would come and cheer her lone home, and he'd sail o'er the waters no more. She anxiously watched for the proud ship to come, and the day dragged its weary length on, and the evening dropped gently its dark curtains down as she stood by the seaside alone. She peered through the darkness and spoke half aloud, "Oh, where can my wanderer be? Must I wait till the morrow's sun sees stirs the fog that is hanging tonight o'er the sea?" While she stood by the seashore, a messenger came, and the mother's heart broke as he said, "But a day's sail from port, the vessel caught fire, and the crew of the Siren are dead." The morrow's sun scattered the fog from the sea as it lit the bright world up with joy. But that mother had passed the dark ocean of death and was resting in peace with her boy. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It always brings tears to my eyes. Some ask if that was based on an incident in my family, but I had no children, so no, it wasn't. But it does bring tears to my eyes. Oh my goodness, we must go because I must go. I'm going to be late for the watch factory. They did not like to be here late. Thank you for coming. Goodbye. I was just standing
wondering what Mother would think of me. What Mother would think if she could see me now. I've led such a rich, full life. Me, Celeste Chamberlain Harding. Such a wonderful life. My sister Caroline and I were raised in Ellsworth, Maine. Not 5 miles from the ocean, not 10 miles from Bar Harbor. Mother and Father were very, very careful to raise us so that, well, we could be called what one would call ladies of gracious refinement. I was a June bride. It was a lovely wedding. My Daniel was 30 years old when we were married. Daniel was well established in business by the time we were married. He had started out in retail when he was but 12 years old. You see, when Daniel was 3, his mother died. And when Daniel was 12, Father Chamberlain died. Daniel went into the retail business, and when he had learned everything that he felt he could learn, he went on into the Boston wholesale clothing industry and continued to learn there. By the time we were married, he definitely was well established in business and knew everything that he could learn. 2 years later, in 1876, we moved out to the young community of Elgin, and here we established our store, the Big Boston store. We were down on the corner, well, I'm sure you shop there, down at DuPage and Grove. It's a wonderful shop, and if you've been there, I'm sure you'd agree that the success is not just due to our hard work. The friendly atmosphere, possibly our wit and charm. Definitely, it helps to have the best garments available in the area in your shop. The store was such a success that Daniel was soon able to hire additional personnel to work the store, and I was able to devote much more of my time to community needs, as well as remain a full partner in the business. And community needs were there. Elgin was a booming industrial city. Why, the Elgin Watch Factory could hardly keep up with the demand for the high-quality Elgin watches. And the Borden Company, they were busy canning more than 10,000 gallons of milk each day, let alone the butter that was being churned in the creameries in the countryside. Elgin was becoming the butter capital. And workers were just pouring into our community. The boarding houses were full. Housing was being built rapidly as workers and their families came to Elgin. Why, by 1887, we had a population of about 14,000 people. We had so many new things. We had electric street lights. We had a horse-drawn trolley, a new railroad station, brand new opera house, no hospital. 14,000 people and no hospital. Well, myself and a few other ladies in the community published an ad. Women of Elgin, young and old, rich or poor, married or single, come and reason with us. Come, lend a hand in the world's great work. Do you know that more than 30 women came to that very first organizational meeting to set up the Elgin Women's Club? More than 30 women came on foot and by horse-drawn carriage. Our motto, progress. And our first task to ourselves, to establish and to manage a hospital. Henry Sherman donated the very first hospital facility. It was an 8-bed facility. We very rapidly outgrew this. The Elgin Women's Club then took to soliciting funds so that we could build a 3-story structure that would house the hospital and would also house a school of nursing for young ladies. We worked very hard. And when I say we solicited contributions, we took anything that was usable. We took beds and bedding. We asked for and took lamps, ice picks, raspberries, jam. We would accept anything, no matter how small or how large. City lots, houses, why we even took as a donation an entire farm, outbuildings and all. No contribution was too small or too big. We were very busy soliciting funds that first year, for you know, it was necessary to provide free beds for those who could not afford the $1 a day charge for care. We sold cookbooks that we put together, handwritten cookbooks of our very own best recipes. I have an excellent one in here if you haven't already bought a copy. And then what else did we do? Well, we took over the trolley one day. We took over the trolley, decorated it with flowers from our garden, and I chaperoned one of the younger ladies, of course. She collected the fares and pulled the ropes. It was a wonderful day. We collected so much for the good of the hospital. It was a chore to gather all this money together, and it was not easy. For in my time, women were not thought to be very bright, and certainly not to have much business sense. I'm sure my own business sense must have been thought to be well above the norm, highly unusual. But you know, I also supported other areas. The arts. Each year in Elgin, we had an art exhibit, and the needle arts were placed in exhibition there. In fact, this tablecloth I had in last year, and I won a prize for it. I'm working on one for next year that I'm sure will be a winner. It's very important that we support and continue these womanly arts of the needlework to encourage them all the way into the next generation. I also worked in my church, in Church of the Redeemer, in Universalist Church. I supported and helped at the YWCA, and I made sure that all received gifts in my will. I worked in my garden. Now that was pleasure, that was not work. As you can see from these lovely flowers, flowers enhance the beauty of a home, and working in the garden sustains and uplifts your soul. In 1901, Daniel and I traveled to Ellsworth, Maine, to see my family, and sadly, Daniel passed on while there. It was a shock after 27 years of marriage. Not long after that, my mother's health became ill, became poor, and she moved in with me. But you know, that wasn't a hardship. My sister had 2 children and had her hands full, while I had no children. I had a home on Douglas with 5 bedrooms. I had live-in servants. It certainly was no hardship for Mother to come live with me. In May of 1907, Mother passed on. Earlier that year, I had accepted a proposal of marriage from a dear friend, David Harding. Daniel and David had worked together for some 30 years, so he was hardly a stranger. We were married very quietly the June following Mother's passing, and enjoyed 7 years together before David too passed on. My last years I was not well, and I traveled to California in the hopes that I might regain my health. But enough of my reminiscences, enough. I'm sure I must have a meeting to go to somewhere. Ta-ta!
The turn of the century. 1699, now it's 1700. 1799, now it's 1800. Well, of course, the turn of the century is the time that we change the numbering system. Just like we roll over the odometer on a Buick automobile, we start numbering all over again, a different way. Well, the turn of the century that I lived through, 1899 to 1900, was much the same in that we rolled over the numbers, but that wasn't the only thing about it. In fact, my turn of the century was a very exciting time. It changed the way we lived, it changed the way we communicated, and it changed the way we traveled. In wonderful and in a very short time, these things changed. Good afternoon, I'm George Spencer Adams, and I'm pleased that they offered me the honor of coming here and sharing with you a little bit of what my life here in Elgin was like. But you know, the thing that I really think is exciting isn't my life here in Elgin, because it's the result of the courage and daring of John Spencer Adams, my father, his adventurousness, and my grandfather, John Adams, they were watchmakers in Waltham, Massachusetts. And being watchmakers there, they had a very good and marketable skill. My grandfather, however, took a challenge. In 1849, he got bitten by gold fever. And so he got on board a ship in Rhode Island and went down along the coast around the tip of South America, Cape Horn, back up along the Pacific coast, and stopped in San Francisco in search of gold. And of course, what did he find? Disappointment. Yes, grandfather, as much as we know from the letters he sent home, didn't even have the ability to go to the gold fields. He stayed in San Francisco, and fortunately, he had his watchmaker's repair kit and did that for a while, and then the letters stopped. Nobody knows what happened to grandfather. But father and my Uncle Oscar remained in the watchmaking business in Waltham, Massachusetts, until they embarked on an adventure of their own, although one, fortunately, that was less risky. You see, they were recruited in 1866 by the young Elgin National Watch Company. It was not even started yet when they were recruited to come here and lend the expertise to the Elgin National Watch Company that was needed. Along with people from Switzerland and New England and all over where there was a watchmaking industry, people were brought to Elgin. Well, Uncle Oscar, and my father both got jobs in the factory. In fact, father was very successful. He was a foreman there. He invented many machines and tools and special kinds that were needed by the watch factory. But after about 16 years of doing that, he got bitten by another bug, just like maybe his father did. He got bitten by the bug of electricity and electric lights. It was one of those wonderful changes that was occurring at that time in our history. The electric light was invented and made it possible to go to a dark, dark place, the city at night, the streets of the city, and brighten them up as if it was daytime. And so father said, if I invent a large tubular steel tower that can stand alone and put that light way up high, I'll have something that people want. I'll have the ability to turn night into day over the entire city. So father, my brothers and I joined in a little business venture to do just this. We developed the electric tower and marketed it in Elgin, other areas around. We were very successful with it. Father even was asked to go to New Orleans, Louisiana, supply electric towers for their system, and also to help with the sewage system in the low-lying city of New Orleans. It was quite a challenge. Well, father was an inventive genius and very successful with his venture. And never lived to see its fruits because in 1894 he had a fatal stroke in New Orleans. That was the end of that venture for him. But he passed on to me the rewards of being in business for yourself and the interest in mechanics and things mechanically, how they work. So as a young man, I decided that I was going to be in business for myself. I had a shop on East Chicago Street, and in that shop, we did machine work at first, and then I hooked onto something that I thought was a very, very good opportunity. You see, in 1890, about 1890 to 1900, there was a wonderful fad going on in this country. It was bicycles. Oh, yes. Because of the rubber tire, it was possible for children and grandfathers and grandmothers and all families, whole entire families, to have bicycles and to go from place to place with convenience and less horse-proof than you had when you were riding horses. Well, they went all over the place on bicycles, and they needed bicycles, and so I manufactured the Adams bicycle in my shop. That was a good business until 1900. All of a sudden, people didn't want bicycles anymore. Why didn't they want bicycles? Because they wanted something else. Oh yeah, this is what they wanted. See that? That's the Model T Ford automobile. Yes, Mr. Henry Ford did a good thing when he invented that car, and he invented the means for mass producing that on an assembly line. It was good for me too, because I opened a garage where my shop was, repaired and sold these things. Yes, we repaired and sold the Model T Ford, the Briscoe automobile. Later, the Buick automobile developed, being a very good feature-laden car, one with a little bit of a higher price. It was a good business to be in. We did that. We had talking machines and Victrolas and phonographs and anything mechanical. Anything that worked that needed fixing, we did it. We sold it. We fixed it. We had a good business there. About 1918, I stopped, thought about things for a while, and I said, there have been a lot of changes. There have been a lot of positive changes, the ones that I told you about, but there was one change that wasn't so positive. When my father first came from Massachusetts, you could go down to the Fox River and you could put your hands in the water and scoop up a big mouthful of crystal, clear, delicious water. And it was good. It was satisfying. You know what? By 1918, you could not do that anymore. So I thought, people want good water to drink. I sold the car business, got into the bottled water delivery business. That was a very good business. Now, you might say it was different. It wasn't as complicated as the automobile business, the talking machine business, but it was a good business for me, one that lasted until I sold it to a fellow that formerly had a garage in 1946, and I retired from business at age 74. Well, my life was a very good life in the city of Elgin. It was one that I was happy to have had. I had my wife Clarice, who's over there beside me, and 3 sons who were born and raised in the city of Elgin. I look back and think it was a wonderful opportunity, a place to live that, thanks to my father and grandfather, I had the comfort of. But I always remembered when I got into the later years, those mechanical things that got me started, those mechanical things that provided all that interest and stimulation, and those mechanical and changing things that were so exciting at the turn of the century. One of my favorites is this Victrola talking machine. It is a wonderful invention. You realize that with this invention, you can actually put this needle down on the phonograph record and listen to the voices of other people. Yes, you can listen and sing and play musical instruments, and you don't even have to be there. Listen to this. It's one of my favorites, John Philip Sousa. And if you want it louder, there's more volume. Well, I hope that for those of you who live in Elgin, that you find it as wonderful a place as I did to live and raise a family. And I hope, let's see, what year is it? 1996? That means that in 4 more years, if you were all lucky, as I was, you will be able to experience the turn of a century. And I hope that your turn of a century is as wonderful and satisfying and exciting and filled with change and happiness as mine was here in Elgin. Thank you all for coming. Step right up. My name is Hiram Perry, and I'd like to welcome you to my office. You see, some people refer to me as a tree trimmer, but I prefer to think of myself as a nurseryman and an arborist. Take a look around. I don't know that any businessman in Elgin has as grand a view as I do from my office today. I admit to having a sense of adventure. I think I inherited that from Commodore Perry. Perhaps some of you have heard of the Commodore. He fought the British in some naval battles on Lake Erie during the War of 1812. I think my father also inherited that same sense of adventure. I don't know why else, in 1838, he would have picked up the family and moved from Syracuse, New York, to settle on the prairies of Campton Township in Kane County, Illinois. I was only 6 years old at the time,
too young to help my father full-time on the farm. My mother had plenty of chores for me. One of my favorite chores on a hot summer afternoon was to carry water up to the house. And on those occasions, I would dilly-dally. I have some other recollections of the prairie, but one of my favorites is actually one that was provided by a family friend who used to travel from over near DeKalb toward the Fox River, and he would routinely stop at our house. He asked me, "Hiram, imagine that you're standing on a small mound. The view from that mound beggars all description. The spectator is surrounded by the prairies like the vast waves of the ocean, and every here and there appear spots of trees, as if planted for the purposes of ornamenting that naturally splendid scene." I have other recollections of the oak groves while you're sitting or standing in an oak grove. One gentleman wrote, "There is nothing in the whole catalog of American Silva that begins to describe the charming, homespun expression these oak groves lend the landscape." Why, perhaps you've heard of some of those fledgling communities, Downers Grove, Buffalo Grove, Elk Grove, and even Oak Grove. All of those communities originated from settlements in oak groves, just like this one. I lament that over the course of my lifetime, most of the prairies have been destroyed, as well as many of the oak groves. I can only hope that future generations will see fit to save some of them for other young explorers that are sure to follow. Those prairies were beautiful beyond description, and it's possible we may learn something about the importance of those critters that lived in those wild places. I have other recollections of my youth that I'd like to share with you. I was known as a rather happy-go-lucky young man with a wonderful voice. I went away to college for 3 years in Ohio. Some of my fondest memories, though, are when I taught vocal music at the Elgin Academy. One of my proudest accomplishments, however, was in 1855 when I, at the age of 23, met, and I might add, successfully courted Miss Marcia Cole from St. Charles. Sometimes when I've been cantankerous or hard to live with, she'll remind me that she's a descendant of a royal family from England, and I will admit that and give her a smile and tell her that she's always been a princess for me. I had a variety of occupations. After we were married, I tried farming for a while. But in 1861, I joined many of my friends in Company I of the 127th Illinois Infantry Regiment. We mustered in to save the Union. Let me tell you, that war changed my life and the lives of many of my friends forever. In fact, many of my friends never made it back. And now they lie buried in cemeteries just like this one, up and down the whole reach of the Fox River. As for myself, I suffered from typhoid. I think it was perhaps the water that I drank. It certainly wasn't as sweet and as pure as the water that I remember from those days on the prairie. I was shipped back to Elgin. I didn't have a lot of strength, certainly not enough strength to take up farming again. But I did accept a part-time job as a tree trimmer. Gradually regained back some of my strength, but I prefer to think I also gained some wit. I became more of a nurseryman and an arborist, and now have been engaged in that profession for 15 years. Many of my friends and people I don't even know stop and ask me, "Hiram, what kind of trees are these?" And I can tell by looking at the bark, and also by the shaggy cap on this acorn. that these are bur oak trees that stood up against the prairie fires that used to sweep across the landscape. Many of my friends will ask me for advice about nursery stock. What should they plant in their orchards? One of my favorite questions, what kind of wood, Hiram, is best for a baby cradle? And sometimes they'll ask me to lay in a supply of black cherry for the wintertime. That reminds me, I'm going to have to get back to work. But before I do, let me give you some advice. And that is to be like a tree. Put down strong roots. Grow tall. Be proud of your accomplishments. Shake off all adversities. And give something back to the community. Why, on a hot, blistering summer afternoon, these oak trees provide welcome shade. And on a cold, blustery winter afternoon, there is no place that I would rather be than by a crackling fire. So my advice for all of you, be like a tree, like these trees surely do. Give something back to this wonderful community of ours. Now I'm going to have to get back to work. Stay with me.
Good afternoon. I hope you're having a good afternoon. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Carolyn Gifford Davis. I was born in Milford, New York, in Tioga County. I lived there with my parents and brothers and sisters for 8 years. But in 1835, my father's dreams and his desire for adventure overtook him and led him to the Illinois country, where he settled a town. In those days, it was called a settlement. He brought his family with him, and there we lived. When we first arrived, our home was not even finished, so we had to move in with Uncle Hezekiah and Aunt Mary Jane. You cannot imagine how crowded that little tiny cabin was with all those people and all those things. Well, finally our home was finished, and we moved in. That little log cabin became the center of that little settlement, Elgin. It was the library, the post office, the church, as well as the school. You know, if that cabin were still standing today, do you know where it would be? It would be right in the middle of the intersection of Villa and Prairie Street. We lived there for 12 years. Oh, not in that same house. Someone put a new road in called Prairie, and that house had to be torn down, so my father built another one. But we lived in Elgin for 12 years. And then my father was again struck with the bug of adventure and the desire to build other towns. This time, it took him to the Wisconsin wilderness. There, he laid out 2 more towns. One called Uleo, which no longer exists, and the other one is a town named Cedarburg. By the summer of 1847, my father had built a brick house and had moved his family there. But this was no happy time in our family's history. For that fall, in November, a fever struck. And in November, my little brother Dexter, who was only 6 years old, died. But there was more to come. A few short weeks later, in December, Lucy, my younger sister, my best friend, and the person with whom I shared my secrets, also died. As I look back over my life, I can see that sometimes joy and sorrow are intertwined. Let me explain what I mean. A few short months after Dexter and Lucy died, I was married. May 26, 1848, my 21st birthday. I married Orlando Davis. Orlando had come to the Illinois country from Sandusky, Ohio. He had a good education, and he was always looking for ways of bettering himself. He later became a bank clerk. The early years of our marriage were spent in Chicago, and our children were a rich blessing to us. Lucy was first, but she lived only a few short months. But in 1851, our son Jay was born, and he was followed by Laura, and May, and Jenny, and Elizabeth, and Stella Amelia. My children did well, each and every one of them. Jay graduated from Chicago University and became an expert accountant. And Laura attended Vassar, and she returned to Elgin Academy where she taught mathematics. You know, if you were to go there this afternoon and look on the Fine Arts building, you would see her name, Laura Davidson Sears. May became a very popular primary teacher in the Elgin Public Schools, and Jenny and Stella Amelia both attended and graduated from Oberlin College. Pretty impressive for women of the 19th century, don't you agree? In 1849, my parents returned to Elgin. At that time, my father began to build the stone cottage, which still stands on Perry Street. They moved into the cottage in 1850, February. But sadly, my father was only to enjoy this home for a few short months. For in August, he contracted cholera, and he was dead within hours. Now it fell to my father, to my husband, to settle the estate and to continue on with my father's business. We lived in Chicago. Much of the business had to be conducted in Elgin. It was a difficult trip in those days, not easy at all. We finally decided that we would buy out the other heirs and move to Elgin, and that we did in 1854. We moved into the stone cottage, which became our home for the rest of our lives. We had many friends and much family in Elgin, and we loved to entertain them. Why, one of the first parties that we held in Elgin was on Washington's birthday in 1855. We invited 150 guests to our home and celebrated. And you know, there was another event that we held every year on the front lawn of the stone cottage. We invited people in early summer to our strawberry festival. And there we served them big bowls of fresh strawberries that we had picked from our strawberry patch. We were very busy in Elgin, and it fell to my husband to handle his business and the affairs of the city. He did not have my father's talent for laying out towns. He had a different one. He knew how to attract the business and industry that was necessary in and he did that. He was influential in bringing the Elgin Packing Company and watched factory to town. He served on the Northern Illinois Hospital for the insane for many years, as well as the board of the Elgin Academy. And he was also one of the founders of the Elgin Bible Society. He was away from home often. So it fell to me to care for our home and our family. I didn't do much that you would find in a history book. But what I did do I saw that Elgin grew. I saw it as a tiny little village. I saw it grow to a town of several hundred people. And finally, I saw it explode into a city with much business and industry. As I grew older, Elgin grew up and thrived. In 1885, our son Jacob, that was a terrible year. My health began to fail, and I withdrew. But by the fall of 1890, I had recovered somewhat and felt well enough to go to Iowa to visit friends and relatives there. On our way home, we stopped in Moline to visit one of our daughters. And it was there on October the 24th, as the clock was striking midnight, that I breathed my last. And I was brought here, to this calm, still place. And I can tell you, Carolyn Gifford Davis.
See the gravestone back of the red stone? That is their number.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Louis Freeman, but if you ever called me Louis, I probably wouldn't answer you. Everybody called me Louis. I was born in 1854 in Prussia. And you're probably wondering why I'm not speaking with an accent. Well, I celebrated my first birthday on a sailing ship bound for America. Our family settled in Hoosier Grove, about 10, 12 miles east of here, set about the business of farming. In my teens, I came to Elgin to serve an apprenticeship as a machinist, and I joined up with the Elgin Volunteer Fire Department. And in 1880, I was appointed a patrolman with the Elgin Police. Now, 1880 was a big year for me. I had been dating a young lady by the name of Frederica Spanholz from Dundee, and in September of 1880, since I had full-time employment, in September of 1880, Frederica and I got married. And 2 months later, we were blessed with our firstborn child, Ida, the first of our 7 children. Patrolling Elgin at that time was quite a task. There were 4 of us, and we covered all of Elgin on foot. And, we had problems. We had, one of the biggest problems was hooligans would insist on playing baseball on Sunday. Well, it was the work of the devil. And so we had to put a stop to that. Also, many people were offended, their sensibilities were offended when people would bathe in the Fox River without tights. And so we had to enforce the ordinance that they wear tights when they bathe in the river. We would also have people who would they would drink a little too much. We would have to arrest them and put them in jail so that they could sober up and release them the next morning, give them a place to sleep and a meal and send them on their way. And many times we would have them back that next night also. In 1882, we got word that the post office in Belvedere had been robbed, and that the robbers had jumped on the train and were heading to Elgin. So the officers, including myself, we were issued firearms and we waited for them to come to Elgin. When they got to Elgin, some shots were fired, but we made the arrest, and I was issued a citation. That's why I wear the silver star for the citation. As Elgin was getting bigger, it became more and more difficult to cover the area on foot. So we got a paddy wagon, a horse-drawn paddy wagon. As you notice, I'm limping. Well, I fell off the damn thing. And it's modern technology, I guess. We were quite recovered from that. We were also running into some problems with a new invention called the automobile. People insisted on racing through town, scaring the horses, throwing up dust, almost hitting pedestrians 5, 10 miles an hour. Just, deadly. And so, in order to control the mayhem that was created by these speeding vehicles, we made it a rule that a pedestrian had to precede the automobile, ringing a bell, warning people that the vehicle was on its way. Now, in 1901, I was appointed marshal of the city of Elgin. That's the chief. I was the one in charge. I held that post for 2 years. Someone else was appointed in my stead. Now, the appointment was made by the city council. Sometimes the city council didn't always agree with the people that work for the city of Elgin. Now, I know that doesn't happen now. There's never any disagreement, but at that time there was. Well, when I was replaced, I was appointed lieutenant of detectives. It was myself and one other patrolman were detectives. I served 45 years with the Elgin Police Department. I saw many changes from walking around our fine community to squad cars, radio. Amazing changes. The size of the town, the growth, amazing. Well, when I retired, I went to work for Home Bank. I helped them with their security system so that the people that deposited their money at the bank would feel secure that they weren't going to lose it. When I retired from there, my wife Frederica and I started to grow old together. Well, in August of 1939, Frederica passed away. I had never been without her. She and I had been married almost 59 years. I knew no other life without my Frederica. 1 month later, I died also. Now, the coroner says that I died of heart failure. No, I died of a broken heart. Frederica and I are lying next to each other, sharing the same stone, sharing our lives that we had starting in 1880. Thank you very much for visiting.
Looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, and everything is